I'm Claire Bennett. I'm 35 years old. And 3 years ago, my mother stole my identity while I was thousands of miles away in a hospital bed, relearning how to walk. She took my name, my medical degree, my credit, my home, even my life story. And when I came back, she looked me in the eye and said, "I was just keeping it warm for you." I've never hated anyone the way I hated her in that moment. If you've ever had someone erase you while pretending they were doing you a favor, comment below and subscribe. You're not crazy. You're not alone. Let me take you back to the beginning, not the crash in India, but before that. Because this betrayal didn't come out of nowhere. My mother had been rehearsing it her entire life. I grew up in a tidy house in Dayton, Ohio, the kind with white shutters, a carefully fertilized lawn, and neighbors who smiled politely but never really knew anything about you. My father, Mark, was an engineer. Practical. Quiet. He died when I was 17 from a heart attack while mowing the lawn. I still remember the way my mother screamed when she found him, not with grief, but with something closer to rage. She hated being alone. More than anything to my mother's name is Teresa Bennett. She's 5 feet 6 inches, loves red lipstick, and always claimed she could have been a lawyer or a psychologist if she hadn't given her whole life to family. But she never gave anything. She demanded it, claimed it, and when she didn't get it, she punished the people closest to her. I was the oldest. Matthew, my brother, was 3 years younger. He was always in trouble, sneaking out, stealing money, dropping out of college twice. He was a walking disaster, and my mother doted on him like he was made of gold. But me? I was the responsible one. The quiet one. The one who never needed anything until it was too late. I paid for college with scholarships, loans, and minimum wage jobs. She didn't contribute a dime. She said, "You're smart enough to figure it out." When I got into NYU for med school, she didn't even come to visit. She said cities made her nervous. But that didn't stop her from bragging about me to everyone she knew, my daughter, the doctor, she'd say, while refusing to help pay for the textbooks I couldn't afford. Even then, I sensed something deeply broken in her. She wanted credit for things she didn't earn. She wanted applause without ever doing the work, and somewhere deep inside, I think she wanted my life. Or at least, the fantasy of it. When I turned 32, I accepted a position with a nonprofit disaster relief team as a trauma physician. I'd always wanted to use my skills outside the hospital to serve people who didn't have access to clean water, let alone adequate medical care. The pay was modest, the risk high, but it felt meaningful. I remember calling her to tell her the news. "India," she'd repeated, confused. "Why would you go somewhere like that?" "To help," I said. "You could help people here. In a private clinic. With benefits. What if something happens to you?" "I'll be careful." She was quiet for a beat, then said, "Don't expect me to come get you if you end up in a ditch somewhere." I didn't. But I also didn't expect to give her power of attorney either. That was my mistake. I was leaving for at least a year. I had bills to manage, taxes to file, a lease to maintain. And Teresa could be responsible when she wanted to be. I gave her limited access, just to handle paperwork if something came up. A temporary arrangement, legally documented. I even had it notarized. She signed the paper with a dramatic flourish, laughing. "Look at that. I'm the boss now." I should have known. 6 months into my work abroad, I was stationed in Maharashtra, India. A severe flood had wiped out several villages. Roads were gone. Bridges underwater. Our team was transporting supplies by motorbike and raft. One afternoon, on a rain-slick road, our bike hit a curve too fast. I don't remember the impact. I woke up in a local hospital 3 days later. I had a broken femur, 3 fractured ribs, a dislocated shoulder, and a moderate concussion. I couldn't hold a pen steady, couldn't remember my own birthday. The first thing I said was, "Where's my phone?" It was gone. Crushed in the crash, the next 6 weeks were a blur of fever, pain, and isolation. The clinic had no internet. I sent one letter, scrawled in barely legible print, and asked a translator to fax it to my mother. I don't know if it ever reached her. Eventually, I was transferred to a hospital in Mumbai where I could finally speak to the outside world. I logged into my email, half expecting a flood of messages. Nothing. Not even a note. Instead, I had a bank alert, AN overdraft warning, MY Chase account, which I hadn't touched in months, had been drained. A $10,000 credit card bill. A charge for a stay at a wellness retreat in upstate New York. A second card I hadn't authorized. A new address on my profile. I called the bank, still half-drugged and speaking through a translator. "I'm sorry," the agent said after verifying my identity. "It appears the account holder, Claire Bennett, updated her information 3 months ago and is actively using both cards." "No," I said slowly. "I haven't been in the United States in over a year." The agent hesitated. "You'll need to file a fraud report." I felt sick. I emailed my landlord, who is living in my apartment. He responded 2 hours later. "You are." Attached was a photo of a smiling woman in her 50s, posing in front of my bookshelf. It was my mother, dressed in my old sweater, holding a mug I bought in Barcelona. Surrounded by my life, but none of it belonged to her. Panicked, I called my friend Rachel in Queens. She still had my spare key. She went over that afternoon and called me in tears. "She's turned it into a yoga studio, Claire. Your stuff is here, but it's rearranged. And she told me she's working as a trauma specialist now. Under your name." I felt my heart rate spike. "What?" "She has your diploma on the wall. Your framed license. She's doing virtual sessions." Claire, she told people you died." My vision blurred. "She told people I'm dead?" "Only the neighbors. She said it helped with the transition. She said, you'd understand." I booked a flight home 2 days later. My passport was flagged at JFK. They thought I was the fraud. My signature didn't match the updated one on file. It took 3 hours and a phone call to the embassy before they let me through. I arrived at my apartment building on a rainy Thursday night. She opened the door wearing my Harvard medical sweatshirt and holding a glass of wine. Her face didn't even change. "Claire," she said brightly. "You're early." I stepped inside, soaked and shaking. "You stole everything," I whispered. She rolled her eyes. "You gave me access. I just kept things going. You lied to my friends. You drained my bank. You told people I was dead. You disappeared. What was I supposed to do, let your life go to waste?" "It's my life." She set her glass down gently. "It was. But you were gone. And I needed a life, Claire. You were just wasting it." I took a step back, horrified. "You're sick." "No," she said softly, smugly. "I'm smarter than you think." She believed she could get away with it. She believed no one would care. She had no idea who she'd just invited back in the door. I stood in the center of my apartment, my home, and for a moment, I didn't recognize it. The layout was the same. The built-in bookshelves I'd installed with Rachel one summer, the antique mirror I'd found at a thrift store in Cobble Hill. But the energy, the essence, the soul of it, was gone. She'd whitewashed the walls, hung Himalayan prayer flags she didn't understand, replaced my books on trauma medicine and neuroscience with glossy self-help titles and essential oil guides. My place had always been clean, orderly, functional. Now it looked like an influencer's weekend retreat. "I see you redecorated," I said, voice flat. Teresa smiled as she tucked a strand of her chestnut-dyed hair behind her ear. "It needed light. Your energy was always a bit heavy. All those grays and blues. This feels more open, don't you think?" I didn't answer. I was trying to study my pulse, trying to resist the urge to grab the wine glass out of her hand and smash it against the wall. Instead, I asked, "Where's all my stuff?" She gestured vaguely. "Stored. Don't worry, it's safe. Most of it was outdated anyway. You should thank me. This place looks like someone successful lives here now." I stared at her. "You're seriously standing in my home, wearing my clothes, drinking my wine, pretending to be me, and you think I should be grateful?" Teresa's smile faltered just slightly. "I didn't say you had to be grateful. I'm saying you left. You were gone for a year and a half. We didn't know if you were ever coming back. I took care of your life while you were off chasing floods and germs and whatever it is you do. I'm a trauma physician. She waved her hand. Right. That. I took a step closer. You weren't helping. You weren't keeping things warm. You were replacing me. Her eyes sharpened. Well, someone had to. That stopped me cold. Not the words. The tone. Like it was obvious. Like she had the right. I remembered being 9 years old and getting the lead in our school play. I'd come home beaming, clutching the script in my tiny hands. Teresa barely looked up from her People magazine. That's nice, she'd said, before launching into a story about how she once almost auditioned for a commercial in college, but didn't because the casting director wanted someone with fewer freckles. She always had to be the center of everything, even when it wasn't about her. But this was something darker. I'm calling the police, I said. Right now. You committed fraud, theft, identity impersonation, God knows what else. She didn't blink. You'd really do that to your own mother? My mother wouldn't have done this to me. She walked to the couch, sat, crossed her legs. Look, Claire, you're tired. You've been through a lot. Maybe you should stay with Rachel for a while, regroup. Let me hold down the fort here until you're feeling more stable. The way she said stable, soft, condescending, made my blood run cold. You're not going to gaslight me, Teresa. That ship sailed when you told people I was dead. She stood. I didn't say you were dead. I said you were missing. That's different. You filed a death benefit claim on my life insurance. Silence. Busted, her expression flickered. That was a misunderstanding. The paperwork was confusing. I thought it was a way to pause your policy. You tried to collect $50,000 by declaring me deceased. Claire, please, you wanted me gone, I said, finally seeing it. Not just out of town. Out of the picture. She opened her mouth, closed it again. Her hands clenched into small fists. I didn't wait for another excuse. I turned and left, slamming the door behind me. I slept on Rachel's couch that night, numb. She made tea, wrapped me in a blanket, listened as I told her everything. She needs to be arrested. Rachel said flatly when I finished, she will be, I promised. But not yet. What do you mean? She's not going to see it coming. I want to take everything back. Publicly. Loudly. I want people to know exactly who she is and what she did. She wants attention? Let's give it to her. Rachel's eyes narrowed. You're going to play the long game. I nodded, and I meant it. The next morning, I started. Step 1. Document everything. I compiled a dossier. Bank statements. Credit card activity. Email logins. Her fake medical blog. A copy of the power of attorney document, forged beyond its legal limits. And a printout of the life insurance claim she'd filed 3 months into my recovery. Step 2. Restore my presence. I went to the DMV and requested a replacement driver's license. I'd need it to open accounts again, to reclaim what she'd taken. They questioned me. She'd already reported her card, my card, lost, and reissued it with an updated photo. Her face. My name. I brought my passport. My hospital records. My NYU ID, cracked and faded but still mine. They issued the card. IT was a small victory, but it felt massive. Step 3. Confront the institutions. I visited my landlord with Rachel by my side. He looked stunned when he saw me, but you're alive. I asked. Real? Yeah. Surprise. I thought you were your mother. I mean, she lied. I handed him the evidence. Showed him bank transactions. Lease transfers. Her forged signature on renewal paperwork. He went pale. You have to file an official dispute, he said nervously. If you want to press charges, I said. I'm just getting started. Step 4. Online presence. I contacted every social media platform where she'd posed as me. Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok. I submitted takedown notices with legal documentation, medical reports, and notarized affidavits. Most of the accounts were suspended within 72 hours. She tried to fight it, posting rants, saying she was being censored, accusing me of being an imposter, but without my photo ID and credentials, she had no leg to stand on. Step 5. Go public. I wrote an open letter, not to her, to the world. I posted it to Medium, Reddit, Facebook, and several online trauma and medical communities where I'd previously been active. I told the full story: the crash, the hospital, the identity theft, the betrayal. I didn't name her directly, I wasn't reckless, but I didn't need to. People pieced it together. The post went viral in less than a week. Thousands of comments poured in. This happened to my aunt with her son. My sister-in-law pretended to be me to steal my disability check. Your mother is a textbook narcissist. I'm so sorry. You're incredibly brave for speaking out. The validation gave me strength I didn't know I still had. Meanwhile, Teresa was unraveling. She texted, called, left voicemails. At first apologetic, then hostile, then desperate. Voicemail 1. Claire, honey, can we just talk? You don't have to do this. We can fix it. I'll step back, I swear. Voicemail 2. You ungrateful little. After everything I did for you, this is how you repay me? I kept your name alive. Voicemail 3. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Please. I can't lose everything. But she already had. Eventually, the police came knocking. I hadn't pressed charges yet. I wanted her to stew, but the insurance fraud triggered an automatic investigation. When you claim someone is dead for money, there are consequences. Especially when that someone walks into an office alive and angry. She was arrested in early spring, charged with identity theft, wire fraud, and filing a false claim. I didn't attend the hearing. I didn't need to. Her mugshot was enough. That red lipstick. That fake poise. Gone. She pled not guilty. Of course. But I'd already won. She wasn't just losing in court. She lost the narrative. People knew. People saw. And she hated that more than anything. Teresa Bennett always thought she could lie her way out of anything. She believed charm could rewrite truth. That if she smiled just right and cried at the perfect moment, people would forgive her. That had always worked before on landlords, old friends, even her ex-boyfriends. She could spin a tale, cast herself as the victim, and walk away from destruction with sympathy and maybe even applause. But not this time. Not after what she did to me. By the time her court date was scheduled, the world had seen her for what she was. Not a grieving mother or a desperate woman trying to survive, but a thief, a liar. Someone who took advantage of her daughter's near-death experience to live a fantasy she hadn't earned. I didn't attend the arraignment, but I read every word of the local coverage. I watched every clip. And I saw something strange in her eyes, not guilt, not fear, rage. She was furious that I had turned the spotlight around. Furious that I was being listened to now. That her version of me, the polished, woo-woo trauma expert with a fake podcast and a Pinterest-perfect apartment, had been stripped away. She didn't just want to be me. She wanted to be a better version of me. That was her real crime. That and the $42,000 she'd siphoned from my accounts. And the $18,000 she made in fraudulent online consultations with clients who thought they were getting advice from a licensed physician, and the $50,000 life insurance policy she tried to collect. Oh. And the 2 federal loans she applied for during the COVID relief period under my name, claiming she was a sole proprietor wellness consultant affected by the pandemic. She wasn't just impersonating me. She was running a whole criminal enterprise in my skin. The feds got involved when the SBA loans surfaced. Apparently, she forged several documents using the scanned copy of my passport I had stored in my old email, an email she'd hacked during my recovery. She even submitted a fake lease agreement proving she was operating a clinic from my apartment, which, in a way, she was. If you count Zoom calls and yoga pants and lavender diffusers as medical practice, at first, I was numb. Then I got angry. Then I got strategic. I met with an attorney, a no-nonsense woman named Dahlia, who took one look at my case and said, "She's going to jail." She's my mother, I said. Dahlia looked up from her notes. Not in this courtroom, she's not. She's a defendant. A repeat offender with a motive, a history, and a trail of fraud that would make a Wall Street executive blush. You don't owe her grace. You owe yourself closure. I sat back and nodded. I didn't want revenge, I wanted resolution. But what I didn't expect, what I couldn't prepare for, was how deeply Teresa had manipulated the people around us. Some of her clients weren't strangers. They were friends of the family. Neighbors from Ohio. People I hadn't spoken to in years who thought Teresa had changed careers and launched a new mind-body healing practice. One of them, a woman named Cheryl, emailed me after the story broke. Claire, I'm stunned. I had no idea your mother wasn't really you. She helped me through my divorce. I thought she was wonderful. I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to respond. Another message came from my cousin Danielle. Hey, I just found out what happened. I'm sorry. Aunt Teresa told us you'd been gone so long because you were detoxing from trauma and needed distance from the family. I thought maybe you were trying something spiritual. I didn't realize you were recovering from a literal accident, then another from a man I didn't even recognize. Hi, Claire. I did an online coaching session with you. Well, with her, I guess, back in August. She said she could help with my PTSD. I paid $400 for a 3-session package. Am I getting that back? That one made me laugh out loud. Bitterly, there were dozens of these messages. People who'd been duped. Some sympathetic, some angry, some embarrassed, but none of them surprised me as much as the letter I got from Matthew. Yes, that Matthew, the brother who vanished into addiction and bad decisions years ago. The one who once pawned my laptop to pay off a weed dealer and then swore I'd misplaced it. His handwriting hadn't changed. Claire, I know I don't have the right to write to you. I've been a terrible brother. I've been absent. Selfish. High half the time and unreachable the rest. But I saw what Mom did. I saw the news. And I needed to tell you, I believe you. She tried to pull something on me, too. Last year. Said she needed my ID to apply for a medical study. Said I'd get paid. I gave it to her. Next thing I know, a credit card I never signed up for is maxed out and debt collectors are calling me. She told me it was a misunderstanding. I should have seen it. I'm sorry. For everything, Matt. I held that letter for a long time because for the first time in years, it felt like someone in my family was seeing the truth, and that scared the hell out of Teresa. She started acting out in court, refusing to cooperate, claiming the charges were part of a coordinated attack by her daughter, her landlord, and internet trolls. She told a judge that the fraud was a spiritual mistake and that she had merged too deeply with her inner child. She said, and I quote, I didn't steal Claire's identity. I just became who she was meant to be. Dahlia choked on her water when she read that transcript. This woman belongs in a psych evaluation, she muttered. I wasn't so sure. Teresa was smart, strategic, and dangerously convincing when she wanted to be. She wasn't insane. She was entitled. There's a difference. When the press picked up the story, woman returns from India to discover mother stole her identity. It went national for about 15 minutes. A few news anchors smiled at the absurdity of it. One late-night host made a joke about it. Guess she took, like mother, like daughter, a little too literally. But for me, it wasn't funny. It was horrifying that I didn't sleep the night that segment aired. My phone blew up. Journalists wanted quotes. A few trolls said I was exaggerating. One claimed I had faked the whole thing for clout. But I knew the truth, and so did the DA. The court set a preliminary hearing date for April 17th. Teresa was facing 3 felony charges: identity theft, mail fraud, and submitting false documents to a federal agency. She was offered a plea deal, 6 months in county jail, full restitution, and probation. She refused. Dahlia told me she'd try to drag it out. People like her always think they can win in the 11th hour. She's hoping you'll back down. That you'll be too emotional to testify. I'm not, I said, and I wasn't. But I did feel something else, something I hadn't expected. Grief. Not for her, but for the mother I never really had, for the woman I once wanted to trust. For the childhood I thought had some sliver of stability, it was all faked. My mother didn't love me. Not the real me. She loved the version of me she could wear like a costume. And when I tried to take it back, she turned on me. That realization burned more than the fraud, more than the debt, more than the headlines. The week before the hearing, I went back to my apartment, now truly mine again, and sat in the middle of the floor. I looked around at the empty walls. I had stripped everything she added, the tapestries, the crystals, the fake diplomas. But something lingered. Her energy. The sense that I'd been violated in the most personal way, that I'd been erased and redrawn by the person who was supposed to protect me. I did something drastic. I painted the walls, all of them, bright, bold teal in the living room, deep emerald in the kitchen, a warm, sandy beige in the bedroom. Nothing like before. Nothing like what she'd done. Something new. Something mined. It was the first time I felt like I could breathe in months. And when the sun rose on April 17th, I put on my best black blazer, pinned my NYU med school pin to the lapel, and walked into that courtroom not as the broken daughter, but as the woman who took her life back. The morning of the hearing felt surreal. I stood outside the courthouse on Center Street, watching the crowd swirl around me, lawyers rushing past in tailored suits, pigeons diving for crumbs, police officers smoking behind barricades. The city was alive, impatient. And somewhere inside that gray stone building, my mother was sitting at a defendant's table, plotting how to make herself the victim again. I stared at the glass doors, heart pounding in my ears, until Rachel arrived. "You okay?" she asked. "No," I said honestly. "But I'm ready." We walked in together. Security was tight. The bailiff took one look at my ID, then glanced at his list. "You're testifying?" Eventually, I said. "Today, I'm just observing." He led us through. The courtroom smelled like old paper and overworked air conditioning. My heels echoed against the floor as we found our seats. And then I saw her, Teresa Bennett, my mother. Her hair was perfectly curled. She wore a navy blazer, not unlike my own. Lipstick, red, of course. Her face was calm, like she was attending a brunch, not a federal fraud trial. But her eyes, those were different. Harder, sharper, desperate in a way only I would notice. She scanned the room. Her gaze landed on me. For the first time, she looked away first. Good. The prosecution started with opening remarks, laying out the basics of the case: identity theft, fraudulent government documents, financial manipulation. They played clips of her online coaching sessions, showed screenshots of the SBA loan applications with my name, my credentials. Teresa sat stiffly, lips pressed tight. Then the judge asked if she'd like to change her plea. Her lawyer whispered something. Teresa hesitated. Then, "Not guilty, Your Honor." Of course, Rachel squeezed my hand. I knew this would be a long game. But I was ready. Afterward, we walked back into the sunlight. So Rachel said, "Now what?" "Now," I said, "we tighten the screws." She smiled. "God, I love this side of you." And that's when the next phase of my plan began, because if Teresa wanted a trial, fine. But I wasn't just going to win legally. I was going to dismantle the empire she tried to build with my name. One lie at a time. Step 1. Her clients. I'd already tracked dozens through her emails. Her calendar app, which she'd synced to my iCloud, gave me access to every scheduled appointment she'd run for the past year. I sent emails, carefully worded ones. "Dear client, my name is Dr. Claire Bennett. You may have received coaching or wellness consulting from someone using that name over the last year. If so, I need to inform you that individual was not me. I am a board-certified trauma physician. I was not conducting online sessions during the time in question. You may have been a victim of fraud. Please contact law firm contact to participate in the ongoing legal case." The responses were immediate. Some were confused. Some furious. One woman, a trauma survivor, emailed me a long message explaining how she had opened up about childhood abuse during one of Teresa's sessions, believing she was speaking to a licensed doctor. "I can't believe I trusted her," she wrote. I thought she understood me. Now I feel stupid. And violated. I responded personally. I had to. I told her she wasn't stupid. That being vulnerable was never the mistake. Trusting the wrong person was. I cried after reading that one. Teresa hadn't just stolen from me. She'd harmed people, broken them further, and now they were turning on her, which brought me to step 2, the platforms. While her social media had already been shut down, I hadn't touched her podcast yet. Yes, she had a podcast, The Trauma Tapes with Dr. Claire. 26 episodes of my mother speaking in my voice, sharing twisted versions of stories I'd told her over the years, sprinkled with pseudoscience and New Age nonsense. I listened to every second. I wrote a public takedown, a comprehensive point-by-point medical critique of each episode. I published it on Medium and submitted it to a few psychology publications under my real name and credentials. IT caught fire. Within a week, 2 mental health forums issued statements condemning her podcast as unethical. Apple Podcasts removed it. Spotify flagged her entire account. The more she tried to maintain her Dr. Claire brand, the more the real Dr. Claire stepped forward and dismantled it. But I wasn't done. Step 3, her friends. Teresa had always been a master networker. Even as she posed as me, she kept her old connections, book club friends from Ohio, ex-colleagues from the car dealership she worked at in her 30s, PDA moms from when I was in middle school. She used them. Always had. I made a list. Called a few. Sent others letters. I didn't yell or accused. I just told the truth. I don't need you to pick sides, I wrote. But you deserve to know who she really is. One woman, Carol, responded with a voicemail. Claire, I had no idea. She told me you were going through something. That you'd lost your license and asked her to fill in. I'm horrified. She always seemed theatrical, but not dangerous. I'm sorry. Truly. Her support mattered more than I expected. Even more than that, it fueled me for the next step. Step 4, court of public opinion. The media attention hadn't gone away. If anything, it had intensified. There was something salacious about a mother stealing her daughter's life. It fit every twisted narrative people loved to dissect. I agreed to an interview, not a tabloid hit piece. A real one. I sat down with a journalist from The Atlantic, someone who had covered identity theft and psychological abuse before. We talked for hours, not just about what Teresa had done, but what it meant. How family dysfunction festers in silence. How narcissists weaponize closeness. How daughters like me, taught from birth to protect and please, become easy prey for emotional predators. The article went live 2 weeks later, the woman who watched her mother become her. It was raw, honest, painful. But I don't regret a word, because it did what nothing else could. It made people see Teresa wasn't misunderstood. Or desperate. Or mentally ill. She was manipulative, calculated, predatory, and suddenly she had no more places to hide. The final straw came quietly. An envelope. Unmarked, I opened it to find a handwritten note. Her handwriting. No apology. No regret. Just 3 lines. You never appreciated me. You always made me feel small. Now you've made us both pathetic. I read it once. Then I set it on fire. I didn't need her words anymore. I had mine, and soon I'd have the last. The pretrial motion was next. A minor hearing, mostly procedural. But Dahlia insisted I attend. She's going to see you, she said. You need to be unshakable. I wore a navy suit. No makeup. Hair back. Simple earrings. Nothing performative. When Teresa was brought in, she looked rougher. Not broken. Just peeled back. Her veneer was slipping. The courtroom was no longer her stage. The judge asked both sides about scheduling, then turned to me. Ms. Bennett, would you like to make a victim's statement ahead of trial? I stood, cleared my throat. Yes, Your Honor. I turned slightly, just enough to face her. You didn't just steal my name, I began. You stole my trust, my future, my voice. You used my trauma, my accident, my absence, to create a fantasy that made you feel powerful. You took money, yes. But worse than that, you took my identity and used it to hurt people who were already in pain. People who trusted you because they thought you were me. Her jaw tightened. I survived a flood, a crash, a long recovery. But I will never forgive what you did when I was too weak to defend myself. You weren't a caretaker. You weren't a protector. You were a thief. And this courtroom? This is where I take it all back. The judge nodded. Thank you, Dr. Bennett. As I sat down, I saw her blink rapidly once, then twice, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw it, not rage, not defiance, but fear. She finally realized she wasn't in control anymore. And I had never felt stronger, and why Mother's fear wasn't loud. IT didn't show up in screams or outbursts. Teresa Bennett didn't unravel like a woman who knew she was defeated. She tightened, like a bow pulled too far. After the pretrial hearing, I watched her shrink into herself, just a little. Her smile wasn't as crisp. Her tone, when she spoke to her lawyer, didn't drip with confidence anymore. For the first time, she looked like someone bracing for impact, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't give me satisfaction. But this was never just about courtroom justice. I wanted something deeper. I wanted her entire version of me, the one she'd paraded around for over a year, to be erased. Not just legally, but emotionally, socially, psychologically. She'd walked through my life pretending she understood it. She'd touched things that didn't belong to her, built relationships in my name, left behind fingerprints that were still smudging the corners of my world. I couldn't burn down the past, but I could clean house. I started doing what she never could, rebuilding with integrity. First came the medical board. IT turned out my license had technically never been revoked or suspended, thank God, but it had been flagged. When she used my credentials to consult for a sketchy wellness startup that sold overpriced supplements to trauma survivors. A quiet investigation had begun, and I hadn't even known about it. I met with the board in person, laid out every document, explained the impersonation, offered to cooperate with anything they needed, timelines, witnesses, expert testimony. The board chair, a tall black woman named Dr. Jameson, sat back and nodded after I finished. You handled this with grace, she said. Most people would have lawyered up and vanished. I almost did, I admitted. But I've worked too hard for this career, and I refuse to let her wreck it from the inside. We'll clear your record, she promised. And you'll get a formal letter of exoneration. It arrived the following week. Thick cardstock. Embossed seal. My name, the real one, spelled perfectly. Clara Elise Bennett, MD. That envelope stayed on my desk for days. A symbol. Proof that I still existed, that I was real and visible again. Next, I tackled the clients. Even after the takedown letters and the initial wave of emails, there were still dozens, maybe hundreds, of people who had only known me through the Teresa-filtered version of Dr. Claire. Some of them had shared deeply personal stories with her. Others had sent money. Some had even given her gifts. One woman, Elena, messaged me privately after reading the article in The Atlantic. Claire, your mother was coaching me for over 8 months. I didn't realize it wasn't you. I'm embarrassed, but also kind of angry. She made me do exercises that left me sobbing for days. I trusted her. I never even thought to verify her credentials. I just wanted to heal. I replied right away, Elena, you're not alone, and you're not stupid. You were vulnerable. She preyed on that. I'm building a network of people who were affected, not to sue, unless you want to, but to make sure no one else falls into this trap. You're not forgotten, she thanked me. Then she introduced me to 3 other clients. Then those 3 introduced me to 5 more. Within a month, I had a spreadsheet: names, contact info, stories. Some were tearful. Others were furious. But nearly all said the same thing. I thought I knew her. I thought I was talking to you. It broke something in me. Not anger, that had already burned clean, but sadness. These were people who came looking for safety, guidance, empathy. And they got Teresa in a lab coat, pretending to care. I hosted a Zoom meeting. I called it Reclaiming Claire. I wasn't sure who would show up, but on that rainy Thursday night, 39 people logged in. I stared at the grid of faces. Women in their 30s and 40s, older men, a college student, a trans woman in Seattle, a mother and daughter duo who had done trauma bonding workshops with Teresa. All of them had been fooled, and all of them showed up. I started by telling them the whole story, and oh, dramatics. Just truthed, I explained who Teresa was, what she'd done, how she accessed my accounts, what she claimed about me. Then I told them the part they'd been waiting to hear. They weren't crazy. You weren't gullible, I said. You were targeted. A few people cried. One woman covered her face. Another cursed, but by the end, something strange happened. They started talking to each other, sharing experiences, comparing notes, reclaiming the narrative together. What was supposed to be a 45-minute call lasted nearly 2 hours, and when it ended, I felt something I hadn't in months. Closure. Not because it was over, it wasn't. But because now it wasn't just my story anymore, it was ours. While all this was unfolding, Teresa started slipping. Not in jail, not yet, but in life. She'd been released on bond pending trial, restricted to travel within New York. Her accounts had been frozen. Her email addresses, the fake Dr. Claire ones, blacklisted by every major domain. She moved in with a friend in Queens, at least until the friend realized who she really was. I got a text from a random number. She told me you were estranged and that you were trying to ruin her career. Then I saw the article. Jesus. I told her to get out. After that, she couch hopped 3 weeks here, 2 weeks there. One night in a hotel lobby until they called security, people weren't welcoming her with sympathy anymore. They were starting to see, and her biggest supporter, my brother, even he cut her off. I met Matthew for coffee, something I hadn't done in years. He was thinner, quieter, clean. For months sober, he told me. Working nights at a printing shop. I'm not looking for a medal, he said. But I saw what she did. And I realized I wasn't far behind her. You're not her, I said gently. Yeah, he muttered. But I've enabled her for a long time. We all have. We sat in silence for a while. Then he said, I used to think you were cold. Like, too independent. Too smart for your own good. But now I get it. I nodded slowly. Thanks, I said. And I meant it because hearing that from him, the one she always protected, always coddled, meant more than he probably realized. And just like that, things began to shift. People who once believed her started believing me, not because I shouted louder, but because I stood longer, because I told the truth, even when it hurt, even when it was embarrassing, even when it made me feel small. And in the meantime, Teresa's trial loomed closer. Her lawyer tried to delay it, claimed she wasn't mentally competent to stand trial, that she was confused, overwhelmed, and suffering from delusional identity issues. The court ordered a psych eval. The result? Manipulative tendencies. High functioning. No indicators of delusion. Translation. She knew exactly what she was doing. I smiled when I read the report. For once, the system wasn't fooled. In late May, the final pretrial motion was heard. Both sides submitted their last requests. Dahlia turned to me afterward. This is it, she said. Once this moves forward, we don't stop. You still in? I looked at her. The evidence folder on the bench beside me. My restored license. The stack of letters from people she lied to. The photo of my apartment, painted in colors she never would have picked. And I nodded. I'm not scared of her anymore. The courtroom was already buzzing before I walked in. Not loud, not chaotic, but tense, like the air just before a thunderstorm. Papers shuffled. Lawyers murmured. Reporters set up in the back row, adjusting their notepads and checking their phones. The judge wasn't even seated yet, and still, the gravity of it all pressed against my chest like a weight I couldn't shake. It was the first day of my mother's trial, and I wasn't just watching anymore. I was testifying. When I entered the room, all eyes turned. Some people probably expected to see a trembling daughter, barely holding herself together. I had no interest in playing that role. I wore a clean black dress suit, my hair pinned back, minimal makeup. No jewelry except the NYU med school pin I kept with me now like armor. I was not Teresa's daughter today. I was her undoing. She was already seated at the defense table. Hair too flat. Face too pale. She wore a gray blazer that was trying its hardest to look professional, but the neckline was frayed and the sleeves were too long. For once, she didn't look camera-ready. Her eyes followed me as I crossed the aisle, but this time, I didn't look back. The prosecution opened with a simple statement. This case is about the theft of more than identity. It's about the theft of a future, of reputation, of trust. The defendant used her daughter's absence to insert herself into a world she did not earn and, when discovered, refused to let it go. Then came the timeline.my accident. My hospitalization overseas, the forged documents, the SBA loan fraud, the impersonation, the life insurance claim. One by one, each piece fell into place like bricks in a wall. Each one higher, stronger, unignorable. The defense had little to stand on. They leaned heavily on emotional appeals. She was scared. Her daughter was unreachable. She panicked and made poor choices in desperation. This is not a criminal. This is a confused woman acting out of maternal fear. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. Maternal fear? Was that what she felt when she drained my accounts? When she charged $2,400 for fake coaching sessions with clients who thought I was still practicing? When she signed a death certificate I never signed? They called me to the stand after lunch. My legs were steady as I walked. I didn't need notes. I didn't need a script. I had the truth. The judge nodded. You may proceed. I took a breath, and then I told my story. I didn't hold back. I spoke about the motorcycle accident, how I'd gone weeks without being able to speak clearly, how my hands had trembled too much to write, how I had trusted my mother to manage my accounts, my mail, my name, only to return home and find her living in my apartment, wearing my clothes, speaking to my friends, and calling herself Dr. Claire. I told them about the moment I walked into my kitchen and found her stirring soup like she owned the place, how she smiled at me and said, "You're early." I told them how she looked me in the eyes and said she deserved the life I had built, that I hadn't appreciated it, and I told them about the damage, the people she hurt, the clients who confided in her, thinking they were speaking to a licensed trauma physician, the ones who opened up about abuse, who sent her money, who followed her advice and spiraled even deeper into trauma. She didn't just take my name, I said. She used it to hurt people. And she didn't care. Because it wasn't about me. It was about the applause she thought she was owed. The courtroom was silent. When I stepped down from the stand, I saw her jaw tighten, but her eyes, they flickered. The mask was cracking. The prosecution continued. They brought in an IT specialist who traced the IP addresses of her logins, showing how they matched Teresa's known locations. They brought in financial analysts who broke down the timeline of the fraudulent transactions. They even brought in a handwriting expert who compared her forged signatures on my medical license renewal to my actual penmanship. The evidence was overwhelming, and yet she still held on, still refused to plead. Her lawyer filed motions, tried to get evidence thrown out on technicalities, argued that the power of attorney document had gray areas. But it didn't matter. The jury could see it, we all could, even her. What I didn't expect, not fully, was how it would feel to watch her unravel publicly. I thought I'd feel vindicated, triumphant, but what I felt was exhaustion. This wasn't just the courtroom version of her I was watching. IT was the woman who'd once packed my school lunches and berated me for not eating the crusts. The woman who told me I smiled too smugly after my valedictorian speech because I made Matthew feel stupid. The woman who once told me my trauma patients weren't real sick people because they put themselves in those situations. She had always diminished me, always needed the spotlight, always needed me to shine just enough that she could claim the reflection. And now here she was, in a courtroom where no one was clapping. The most surreal moment came 2 days into testimony. They played a clip from her podcast. She'd recorded 26 episodes as Dr. Claire, mixing plagiarized articles with my old journal entries and adding in psychobabble she barely understood. I end this particular episode, she spoke about daughters who forget their mothers. She said, sometimes, when daughters outgrow you, you have to remind them where they came from. It's not theft. It's preservation. She said that with my name in the title.as, if she believed she was the curator of my legacy.as, if she was protecting it from me. I watched the jury. They looked disgusted. Good. During a break, I stepped outside for air. That's when I saw her. Cheryl Point, one of the fake clients. The woman who'd emailed me months earlier. She walked toward me cautiously. I wasn't sure if I should come, she said. But I needed to see this. Are you okay? She nodded. I am now. But for a while, I really believed her. I told her about my miscarriage. She said she understood. That she'd seen it in her practice. I inhaled sharply. I'm sorry. You're not the one who should apologize, she said. And honestly, watching you take this back, it's the most healing thing I've seen in years. We hugged, and I cried. For the first time since this started, I cried in public and I didn't care. By day 4 of testimony, the cracks became fault lines. Teresa stopped showing up in makeup. Her notes were sloppy. Her whispering with her lawyer more frantic. Her strategy shifted from denial to deflection. She tried to paint me as overworked, rigid, ungrateful. She abandoned the family, her lawyer said. And this woman, Teresa, simply tried to hold it together. Is that a crime? Yes, I thought. Yes, it is, but the jury didn't need me to answer. They'd already made up their minds. The day before closing arguments, something unexpected happened. Matthew showed up, not in the gallery. In the hallway, he walked up slowly, hands in his coat pockets, eyes tired. I just wanted to say, he began. You're stronger than any of us ever gave you credit for. You didn't believe me, I said quietly. I didn't want to believe her either, he replied. But you faced her head-on. That means something. I nodded. She still thinks she's the victim. He chuckled. She always did. Even when she was the one slamming doors. We stood in silence. Then he said, when this is over, I'd like to start over. If you're open to it. I looked at him, really looked, and for once, he didn't seem like the broken version of our childhood. He seemed like someone rebuilding. Maybe, I said. We'll see. It was honest, and it was enough. That night, I couldn't sleep. The trial would end soon, and no matter what happened, the chapter would close, but I wasn't afraid of that anymore, because I'd already reclaimed what mattered. MY named, MY career, MY voice, MY truth, and no one, not even the woman who raised me, could take that away again. There's a moment in every performance, in theater, in music, in life, when the mask slips, when the illusion cracks, and in that instant, what was carefully staged collapses under its own weight, revealing what was always there. Beneath the surface, that moment came for Teresa Bennett during closing arguments. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even loud. But it was complete. The prosecution had just wrapped. Their final words hung in the air like a verdict waiting to be spoken. This isn't just about money. Or a name. This is about identity, the most sacred thing a person has. And what the defendant stole wasn't just her daughter's career. She stole her future, her autonomy, and her voice. That's what we're asking you to return. Then came her turn. Teresa's lawyer stood slowly, adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, and then, in an unexpected move, he motioned for her to speak directly. Your Honor, with the court's permission, he said, Ms. Bennett would like to offer a personal statement. The judge looked over his glasses, hesitated, then nodded. You may proceed. Keep it brief. The room stilled. I didn't move. Neither did the jury. Teresa stood, walked to the center, and began to speak. I never meant to hurt anyone, she said. Her voice was low, soft, the carefully curated maternal tone she'd used all her life. I was scared. My daughter was gone. No calls, no updates, just silence. Weeks turned into months. I thought I'd lost her. She paused, waited for sympathy. None came. So yes, she continued. I started opening her mail. paying her bills, then answering calls, then emails. And then, people started calling me Dr. Claire. And I didn't correct them. A few jurors shifted uncomfortably, but it wasn't malicious. I wasn't trying to scam anyone. I just stepped in. I thought, maybe this was what I was meant to do. She looked toward the jury box. I've always wanted to help people. And I did. My clients, they said I'd change their lives. I listened. I cared. Maybe I didn't have a degree, but I had wisdom, experience, empathy. And maybe that counts for something too. The judge didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. She was digging her own grave. I'm not a criminal, she finished. I'm a mother. She looked directly at me then, and I still love my daughter. For a second, I thought she might cry, but she didn't, because it wasn't real. It never had been. The courtroom fell silent again. Then the judge dismissed us until the jury returned a verdict. We filed out. I heard whispers. She really believes that, doesn't she? She didn't even apologize. She's unwell. I didn't respond. I didn't have to, because for the first time, people were seeing her not through charm or lipstick or storytelling, but as she was, manipulative, cold, and deeply committed to her version of the truth, and it was unraveling, fast. That afternoon, I got a call from Elena, one of the former clients I'd connected with. You won, she said before I even answered. No verdict yet, I replied. No. I mean it. You already won. The way you've handled this, it's given so many of us clarity. Clarity. I used to blame myself for trusting her. I thought I was weak. But watching you take your power back, it reminded me that boundaries are strength. That naming harm isn't cruel. It's healing. I blinked back tears. Thank you, I said. That means more than you know. No, she said. Thank you. The jury was gone for 3 hours, long enough to make us nervous. Short enough to suggest clarity. When they returned, the judge asked for silence. Have you reached a verdict? He asked. The foreperson stood. We have, Your Honor. Please proceed. Count 1. Identity theft. Guilty. Count 2. Wire fraud. Guilty. Count 3. Filing false documents. Guilty. Each word was a nail, and as they echoed through the courtroom, I felt something strange rising in my chest. Not joy, not revenge, but peace. A quiet, still kind of peace, the kind that comes not from victory but from validation. After the verdict, Teresa didn't cry. She didn't lash out. She simply sat down, eyes fixed forward. Her lawyer placed a hand on her shoulder. She didn't move. I wondered if she finally understood, not just that she'd lost, but that the game was over, that there was no version of this where she came out the hero. She wasn't misunderstood. She wasn't a tragic figure. She was a thief. A fraud. A liar. And now, she was a convicted felon. Sentencing was scheduled for the following month. In the meantime, she was placed under house arrest. Her bond was revoked. Her passport seized. The media swarmed for a few days. Headlines, interviews, think pieces. But eventually, the noise died down. The world moved on, and so did I. I moved back into my apartment, fully painted, cleaned, restored. I resumed medical practice on a limited schedule. My name was cleared. My reputation repaired. But more importantly, my sense of self, the core of who I was, had been reclaimed. 1 boundary at a time. Rachel helped me replant the garden on the windowsill. We laughed over drinks. And one night, as we sat watching a thunderstorm, she said something that stayed with me. You didn't just take your name back, she said. You took your life back. I'm still taking it, I said. 1 day at a time. And that was enough. A week before sentencing, I got a letter, handwritten, from her. My mother. Dear Claire, you probably won't read this. And if you do, you'll dismiss it. That's fine. I've come to understand that maybe I went too far, but I need you to know something. I didn't do this because I hated you. I did it because I wanted to be you, and that may be the saddest part of all. I don't expect forgiveness. But I hope someday you'll see the version of me that tried. Love, Momi. Read it twice. Then I burned it because the version of her that tried was the same version that lied, and I wasn't carrying that weight anymore. sentencing day was quiet. The courtroom less full, the press mostly gone. Teresa stood before the judge in a beige suit and court-appointed flats. Her makeup was gone. Her confidence, too. The judge listed the charges again, reviewed the harm done not just to me, but to the dozens of clients, friends, financial institutions, and government systems she had manipulated. Then he pronounced the sentence: 18 months in federal prison, 0.5 years probation, full restitution, mandatory psychiatric evaluation and counseling. She didn't speak, didn't weep, just nodded, and then they took her away. I walked outside alone. No cameras, no applause, just sky, just air, just freedom. When the doors of the courthouse closed behind her, it felt like the sky got a little clearer, not because justice had washed everything clean. That would have been too easy, but because, for the first time in my life, my mother no longer had control over me, over the narrative, over her weaponized version of love. She was just gone. Behind bars. No more lipstick and tears. No more borrowed names, just Teresa Bennett, inmate #56109-3A. And me, I was still standing. Not healed. Not untouched. But whole enough to breathe again without her voice in my head second-guessing every exhale. The weeks after her sentencing were strange, not quiet, exactly, but still in a way I didn't expect. I thought there'd be more noise, more press, more fallout. Instead, there was life, plain, ordinary, unfiltered life. I went back to work in a part-time capacity, just 2 days a week. My clinic supervisor, Dr. Shah, welcomed me back with a warmth that made my throat tighten. "You've been through a war," she said. "This is just the rebuild." It wasn't the same job I'd left, and that was okay. I wasn't the same person who had left. I started seeing patients again, the kind who came in for migraines and back pain, and sometimes the deep grief that clings to you like damp clothes. And I found something in that repetition. The rhythm of care. The way pain moved in patterns and how healing never looked the same twice. I understood it better now, not because I'd studied trauma, but because I'd survived it from the inside out. Rachel came over one night with cheap red wine and a new plant she named Vera Wong for no reason at all. "She's dramatic," she said, gesturing to the plant. "But she'll thrive in bright light." We sat on the couch, drinking and listening to the rain, while she updated me on her dating life, and I updated her on Matthew. "He's doing okay?" she asked. I nodded. Surprisingly, he started going to a group. Staying clean. We text sometimes. That's huge. It is. There was a pause, then Rachel leaned in. "Do you think you'll ever forgive her?" I didn't answer right away, because the truth was, I didn't know. Forgiveness had never been a clear destination for me. It wasn't a straight road. It was a spiral staircase, one where some steps were cracked, others missing, and some too slick to stand on for long. I wanted to believe in forgiveness. In the kind that doesn't erase what happened, but doesn't let it consume you either. But with Teresa, everything had always been conditional. Transactional. Even her apologies came with strings. "Forgive me so I don't feel guilty. Forgive me so we can go back to the way things were. Forgive me so I can still be the mother in your story." And I couldn't give her that, not then. "Maybe not ever. I don't think forgiveness is the point," I said finally. "I think freedom is." Rachel nodded. "That makes sense." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. A month after sentencing, I received a letter in the mail. Official. Unopened. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a list, a breakdown of Teresa's restitution requirements. My name was at the top of the victim list. $42, $981.55 in stolen funds. $8. For 100 in fraud-related losses. $3. 000 in therapy reimbursements. Total owed $54, $381.55. She'd be paying in installments from her prison labor, a few dollars a week. If that it was laughable. Symbolic at best, but I didn't care about the money. The only number that mattered was the ID next to her name, because it proved, in ink and law, that she wasn't me anymore. She never had been. I spoke at a trauma recovery summit 2 weeks later. Not about my story. Not directly, but about reclamation, how people rebuild when their lives have been hijacked. How identity isn't just paperwork and degrees, but memory, voice, choice. Afterward, a woman approached me in tears. My mother was like that too, she whispered. Not the fraud, but the erasure. The constant taking. I nodded. You're not alone. Neither are you, she said. And that stuck with me because for so long, I'd believed I was. Summer arrived slowly. The heat felt sharper than I remembered, but the air was different now, less oppressive, more breathable. I went to Coney Island with Matthew. Yes, that happened. He wore a plain blue t-shirt and sneakers. Carried a bag of chips like it was sacred cargo. We didn't talk about Teresa. Not really. Instead, we talked about childhood, about the dog we never got. The time our basement flooded. The summer we thought ice cream for dinner was rebellion instead of desperation. IT was light. And strange. And almost healing. Before we left, he turned to me and said, "Thanks for not giving up on me." I almost did, I admitted it. He nodded. Same. It wasn't a movie ending, but it was human, and that was enough. Back home, I found myself staring at the last thing she left behind. An old photo, one I hadn't burned. IT was from my college graduation. Me in a red robe. Teresa beside me, her hand on my shoulder, smiling like she'd earned the degree too. I almost tossed it in the trash, but I didn't. I slipped it into a folder marked history and put it in the closet. Because healing doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. IT just means it doesn't define you anymore. The night before what would have been her birthday, I dreamed of her. She was standing in my kitchen again, stirring soup. Only this time, I wasn't afraid. She looked older, smaller, and when she turned to face me, her eyes weren't filled with calculation. They were empty. I didn't know how to be anyone else, she said in the dream, and for once I believed her. But I didn't hug her. I didn't cry. I just said, "You don't have to be anyone anymore." And then I walked out. When I woke up, I felt light, not joyful, but clear, like fog lifting after a storm. There's no neat bow at the end of a story like this, and oh, full circle forgiveness. No picture-perfect reunion. No dramatic courtroom confession where the villain sobs and begs to be saved. Sometimes the villain goes to prison and sends letters no one reads. Sometimes the daughter stops looking for a mother in people who can't be one. And sometimes the real victory isn't revenge. It's restoration. Of your name, your boundaries, your peace. I watered Vera Wong, opened the windows, and let the light in. My apartment, my space, smelled like lemon balm and fresh soil. No incense. No false photos. No scripts. Just truth. Just me. 6 months after Teresa was sentenced, I got a phone call from a correctional facility in upstate New York. I let it ring, then I let it go to voicemail. Then I deleted the voicemail before I ever listened to IT. IT didn't matter what she had to say. She wasn't part of my life anymore. Her sentence was hers to serve, and my life was mine to live. And I had no intention of letting her back in. Not even as a voice on a recording. I'd spent so long fighting to be heard that silence had become sacred, not emptiness, not avoidance, but silence as peace. The absence of her voice, her judgments, her long sighs followed by backhanded compliments. The absence of her pretending to love me while secretly resenting everything I became. My days were filled with slow routines. Coffee on the fire escape. Quiet dinners with Rachel. Sessions with clients who didn't know my story and didn't need to, because what mattered wasn't what happened to me. What mattered was how I came back from it and how I never let it happen again. I started writing again. Not for revenge. Not even for justice, but for clarity, for truth. I began a blog, anonymous at first, where I shared thoughts on boundaries, on reclaiming identity, on rebuilding after betrayal. I didn't tell my story outright. I didn't name her. I didn't need to, but the people who needed it found it. Comments trickled in. This sounds like my mother. My sister did something similar. Thank you for writing this. I thought I was the only one. You never are. And when people said that to me, "You're not alone," I didn't understand the power of it until I became the one saying it back. Rachel helped me paint a wall in the hallway burnt orange with dark green trim. She said it was bold. I said, good. We laughed so hard our arms ached. This is your house now, she said as we stood back to admire it. No, I said. It always was. And that felt good. Matthew and I stayed in touch. We weren't best friends. We weren't even consistent, but we were honest. And that was something new. He sent me a photo of his 6-month sobriety chip. I sent back a photo of my freshly painted wall. We didn't say much. We didn't have to. The money started coming in small amounts. Her prison restitution fund deposited less than $20 a month into my victim's account. I never touched it. I let it sit there, untouched, gathering dust. Not because I wanted it to grow, but because it meant she still owed me and would for the rest of her life. Not in dollars. In truth. In consequence. In silence. Sometimes I think about forgiveness, not because I'm seeking it, but because people expect it. Don't you want to forgive her and move on? Don't you think she's paid enough? She's your mother. As if biology is an excuse. As if giving birth is the same thing as being safe. But here's the thing. Forgiveness, for me, is not a door I walk through. It's a boundary I set. It's choosing not to retaliate. Choosing not to let her shape my identity anymore. It's the quiet act of saying, you don't get to define me. Not through violence, but through absence, through clarity, through choosing something better. A new tenant moved into the unit across from mine. She introduced herself as Nina, a nurse in her late 20s. She'd just gotten out of a bad breakup and wanted a clean space to start over. I know the feeling, I told her. She asked what I did for a living. I'm a trauma physician, I said. And sometimes a writer. Cool, she said, smiling. Sounds like you help people. I thought about that, then I nodded. Sometimes. And that was enough. On the 1-year anniversary of her arrest, I stood in front of a mirror, not for vanity, not for reassurance, but to truly look, at the woman I'd become. My face was a little older. There were lines near my eyes I hadn't noticed before. My hair was darker than it used to be, no more highlights, but my eyes, they were clear, not full of pain, not full of fear, full of truth. Mine. Rachel and I took a trip that summer. A real one. No hospital missions. No humanitarian agendas, just 2 women. 2 plane tickets. And 1 very overdue vacation. We went to Barcelona, the same city I had once visited in college, long before anything in my life had broken open. I walked the same streets, ate paella at a table with strangers, touched the walls of Sagrada Familia and whispered nothing to no one, and for the first time in years, I didn't think about her. Not once. When we returned, I received an invitation in the mail, not from her. From the prison. It was a form letter. Family of inmate #56109-3A are invited to participate in virtual visitation. I put it in the shredder without reading the rest, and I smiled as the paper vanished into strips because I was done visiting that story. Now, when people ask me what happened, the ones who know a version of the truth, I say this. My mother tried to become me. I didn't let her. She paid the price. I lived the truth. And that's all they need to know, because the rest, the pain, the betrayal, the courtrooms and cracked identities, that's mine. Not to carry like a wound, but to wear like a scarred, healed 1.1 that says, this happened. And I'm still here. Some people self-destruct with a bang, and why mother self-destructed with a lie, and she almost got away with it, almost. But the thing about liars is they can only wear someone else's skin for so long. Eventually, it tears. Eventually, people see, and the truth, it doesn't shout, it doesn't gloat, it just stands still and lets the storm pass. And that's what I became, still, solid, myself. I didn't destroy her. She did it to herself. I just stopped playing along.